All right, greetings everybody, and welcome to week number 7. That is right, week number 7 of your 9443 class, which is your academic libraries class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. Jace K. Austin, and what we are going to do this week is we are going to have a quick state of the course update, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about library spaces and how they are changing and evolving. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to talk about that much because one of the key pieces of literature that I would have used for that I used last year for that, is no longer available, and I'm not exactly sure why. And so I'm going to kind of explain also why that kind of shoots me in the foot. But from there, what I'm also going to say is that this should be a quicker check-in video now because I'm not going to have access to those resources that I was going to share. And so at least there's that. You'll get through this check-in video a lot faster. By the way, you can always speed it up, of course. But let's get into it. Let's get into that state of the course update. So let's make me small here. Okay, so we are recording on October the 8th. So let's click out of some of these and get here. So we do have I've got to reach out to Julia because we do have a sync session next week. That kind of snuck up on me. I'm sorry. We had just had some, and I thought we had just had our sync session here. Time is just flying. Maybe that's what it is. Time is just flying. Could have sworn Brady was just here last week. But yeah, so we have a sync session next week, so that means no check-in video next week. And then your first essay assignment is going to be due a week from, well, not your first essay assignment because you've done your library website review. That was an essay assignment. But you're going to have what we call essay assignment number 1, which is a hypothetical situation that you're going to answer to, and that's going to be due on October 19th. So yeah, you do have stuff coming up. Again, you got a sync session coming up next week, and you got an assignment due a week from Sunday. But first of all, what I will say is that it looked like most of your because I will be counting off on this essay assignment if your APA is incorrect. It did look like most of your APA was pretty good on the library website reviews. Okay, so but those also weren't as APA intensive. Just know that if you didn't lose points for APA usage on that, you probably did your APA usage correctly. However, if you want to get a refresher very quickly, I did do the 2 common APA mistakes video it's been several weeks ago now, but you can go back and find that if you want to just make sure that your APA is on point, because again, I will be counting off for incorrect APA. So some other things that I want to mention here then is that, excuse me for one moment. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. The other thing that I think does bear mention, and this might be just a flaw in how I designed the course, but with essay assignment 1 being due on October 19th, let me go back in here because I actually don't really think you have much of anything to do outside of discussion boards until December. Is that what I did? I'm sorry, hold on, you all, because I'm kind of surprising myself here. Okay, yeah, that's my fault, and I have no idea what I was thinking. You will have, again, on November 11th, you'll have that sync session that, again, even though it's Veterans Day, I've sort of incentivized you all coming in that day, coming in virtually that night, to attend that, and I'll go back over that. It's in an announcement that I put in at the beginning of the class, but I will restate what I said in that announcement. I guess after your October 19th assignment, you really don't have a major assignment until December, so you don't really have anything for basically 2 months there. So I apologize for that. That was not something that I'm not even exactly sure what I did there. I did move up there was a reason I moved up the due date on this, but anyway, okay, so I apologize for that. So yeah, you're not really going to have anything other than discussion board prompts after you turn in this essay assignment. So I hope you don't get bored with the class, but that should be, hopefully you will take that as smooth sailing. And there's, again, like I mentioned toward the beginning of the class, there's not really much in the way of assessment that I would do in an academic libraries class. It's not like with reference in the business class where I have to kind of assess your ability to use databases and pick out resources and things like that, or your assess your advocacy abilities within the intellectual freedom class. But with this class, yeah, there's not really anything that I'm assessing. So yeah, I've only got 3 assignments in it, but I think I moved that assignment up a little too far. So I apologize for that. But with that said, I think all of your grades are going to be fine. All of your final grades are going to be fine. I don't think you need an additional assignment in order to keep your final grade afloat. So anyway, that is what's going on, and yeah, that's what's going on with the state of the course. So let's talk about the library spaces. Give me one moment. All right, so at this time, what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about library spaces, but part of this is what I want to just kind of express here is that, again, in the key readings that I had from last year that I thought were going to be really good and that I want to share again this year, those are apparently no longer available. They were from, I believe, the University of Central Michigan, and again, they were from last year. If you Google around, you will find this. This is from the University of Central Michigan from August 2022. However, there is the reason I'm shying away from that is because that is right in the middle of COVID. And so when we talk about library spaces, and this is a good time for me to just mention this. By the way, this check-in video should not be longer than about 25 minutes unsped. So if you speed it up, it should be even shorter. This isn't going to be a long one. But yeah, the reason why I'm shying away from a lot of the recent library space literature, honestly, is because it is stuff that was written while we were still dealing with COVID and the aftermaths of COVID and all of those things. So, I say that to say that what's happening now, people get offended when you say that the pandemic is over, so I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is that we are not at the peak of the pandemic now. People are no longer masking up. We no longer have COVID mandates, things like that. So regardless of how you feel about whether or not the pandemic is actually over, we are not really operating with the same concerns that we were at this time, like in August 2022. And so this recent literature from 2020, really from 2020 all the way up through 2023, even though we were back on campus by 2023, as you all know, it still, the literature just has not caught up. Like, even as people are talking about, like, even as individual libraries, I'm not even talking about peer-reviewed literature, which takes longer to get out, as you all probably are aware. But even not dealing with peer-reviewed literature, I'm just talking about literature where individual libraries are just talking about how they've repurposed their own space, which I had that with Central Michigan from last year. And it was a thing that was written, I believe, last year. It was either that or 2023, but it was something post-pandemic. And that's what I need to really talk about repurposing library space effectively in this moment, is I need stuff that is post-pandemic. You can go on Google and find plenty of stuff before the pandemic, and there's several things during the pandemic that I saw that I was like, no, I don't want to use this because this is actually probably already out of date. The thing is, we had to go so quickly. When you talk about how appropriate these articles are date-wise, we had to go so quickly from the pandemic to now the Trump re-election, which has affected how libraries are being funded because of all these changes in funding at the national or the federal level. Okay, so it's really hard to actually get the worthwhile, the actual useful literature in any form for this particular subject, but I'm going to try to do it. So now that I've explained to you all, and again, I hope you all have sped it up, but now that I've explained to you all how difficult it is to get the literature, now I'm going to talk about some of the literature that is out there, really just 2 pieces that are out there that you can Google very quickly. And these are not, again, this is not peer-reviewed literature. This is just trade literature. But it's out there and it's still useful. And it's something that we don't need to go wait on a peer review process to actually talk about these things, right? So let's get into it. This first piece is going to be here, and this is going to be, this is actually not even from a library website. It is from Building Design and Construction. This is an architecture website, but it's from September 12, 2024, so just over a year old. And so there's some useful things that we can get out of this. How space supports programming changes at university library. All right, so we're actually going to give this guy one of my little classic kind of read downs here. And we'll do the same with the follow-up article and with the third article here. But so what has changed since Hillman Library was built in 1968? First of all, let's scroll back up. So Hillman Library is the library at the University of Pittsburgh, and they agreed to sit down and do kind of a Q&A with this architecture website. So what has changed since Hillman Library was built in 1968? The digital communication and shared online databases allow for easy, widespread information sharing. So not every library needs to have its own copy of materials. So increasingly, little used volumes are being stored off-site or in automated storage and retrieval systems, and students may not browse shelves or card catalogs like they used to, but they still want space that supports their need for making, discovering, and group work. So in response to the changing needs, because we don't need all of these physical materials anymore, in response, we don't need the journals. We certainly don't need the bound journals as much as we used to, and we need fewer physical books. We do need physical books, but we need fewer than we used to as well. So because of that, Hillman removed 70%, and that is a lot, but that is not uncommon. That is not uncommon. They removed 70% of their collection, trimming on-site volumes from 91,000 linear feet of shelves to 27,000 linear feet of shelves, focused on distinct collections. This decrease allowed for an increase in space for specialty services, group study, maker spaces, and classrooms. Now, again, we are going to have a sync session about maker spaces on November the 11th. Joe and Jennifer are going to talk about a few other things. And by the way, Joe is a Mizzou alumni, in case you all wanted to know. But Joe and Jennifer are going to talk about a few other things, but they are going to talk probably primarily about maker spaces. So I'm not going to speak too much on that right now. But yes, as you can see there, this is a drastic reduction. And what happens is a lot of times that gets replaced again for specialty services. Specialty services can be things like writing labs and that sort of thing at UMKC. One of the specialty services that got moved into the library was the writing lab. But you can also have like tutoring and that sort of thing, group spaces, so group study. You can have group rooms and that sort of thing. A lot of places have repurposed library space for that. And then also, of course, the maker spaces in the classrooms. Now, here's what I would want you all to be on guard about, specifically if you become a person that works in upper administration at your library. You need to be careful about the repurposing of library space for things that do not help the library, and you need to fight tooth and nail for that. So one thing that I have seen at several libraries, and it doesn't get documented in the literature very much, which is unfortunate. So it's one of those things that, again, falls into that they didn't teach us in library school realm that you're going to hear throughout your career. But one of the things that we don't teach people in library school, but that I am going to tell you about at this time, is that there are a lot of academic institutions that see libraries as spaces to just put stuff in, including stuff that has nothing to do with the library. And I would want you all to always advocate against this throughout your librarian career. So to give you an example, there are several academic libraries out there right now that have lost space that could have been study space, that could have been other types of workspace, that could have even been space to hold volumes, but they lost that space to offices for external people. And when I say external people, I don't mean that these rooms in the library became offices for librarians or for people who had missions who were tied to the library, like tutors. I'm talking about administrators ended up having their offices in the library, or people who were staff and doing things like they were directors of diversity services or things like that. They ended up having their offices in the library. And don't get me wrong, you want those people to have office space, you do. But the library I believe that libraries need to protect library space and to make sure that library space is dedicated to library purposes and other study and scholastic purposes. Okay, so always be on guard for when administration is looking for things that have nothing to do with the library, but they're looking for space for these things, and they say, oh, well, how about the library? Yeah, we could just put somebody's office in the library. Fight that tooth and nail. No, I won't spend too much time on this, and but I do want to just kind of also note really quickly that when it comes to holdings, we are not just talking about book holdings. So in addition to decrease in volumes and things like that, this library, Hillman Library, just like a lot of libraries throughout the country, have also dedicated more space to artifacts and that sort of thing, artifacts, special collections. And by the way, books can be included in artifacts. So if you have like rare books and that sort of thing, those typically also kind of count as artifacts. So yes, that's something else that space has been repurposed for. Now, this is one that I'm sure you all are aware of, and this actually is not a new trend. In fact, this was actually kind of been going on back when I was in undergraduate school, which was 20 years ago now. I graduated in 2005. But yes, students are using the libraries more, academic libraries more and more for collaborative study and group work. And that's something. So, I mean, you might even be hard pressed to find a university with a library of decent size that has not at this point dedicated a lot of its library space, rededicated a lot of its library space to group work and collaborative study spaces. And that includes having equipment in there, like things where you can have like a shared monitor, like a big screen monitor and that sort of thing. And more than one person at a time can link up their laptops, and then people can kind of share information, share screens, and that sort of thing. So you've got like a lot of technological advances going on in academic libraries as well. And these two kind of things, like your technology that enables collaborative work, in addition to having the space, makes the library a very desirable place for that. And with that said, you will see that libraries, a lot of academic libraries, have kind of eased up on their noise restrictions as well. Sometimes nowadays, you'll find a lot of libraries that will just have maybe like a quiet floor, but they won't necessarily be quiet spaces, okay? So that's something to be aware of. I'm going to skip that lighting one because that was actually kind of unique to the University of Pittsburgh's library in particular, but let's go down to the students engaging more in active hands-on learning. That's what a lot of these maker spaces are about. Maker spaces a lot of times do include like studios, recording studios, where you can record audio and visual. And this is something that I think is very important as well. So a lot of times if you're going to have a maker space, you should probably have a maker space librarian or somebody who operates the makerspace specifically and takes that on as a job, can recommend things be added or taken out of the makerspace based on usage, and they are trained to use all the things in the makerspace so that they can assist patrons. It is very important, in my opinion, that makerspaces be places where it is okay to be a beginner, especially if it's a makerspace in a library, because we need to be accommodating as librarians. We need to be accommodating people who are novices at things, okay? Because they can come to the library to learn. All right, and finally, with that said, what hasn't changed the library's role as the heart of the campus, the need for students to have a place where they can feel connected to their work, their school, their peers, to the expertise of librarians, and on urban campuses like Pitt to the larger community. So yes, libraries, we do have a underlying goal as academic librarians of trying to be one of the welcoming places on the college campus, okay? Welcoming for students. There are degrees to where you may or may not want your academic library to be welcoming to people in the community. Again, that's just not a one-size-fits-all thing. Some places you do want that, but some places you don't. And just for the sake of time, I'm not going to get too much into that in this video, but I might at a later time. All right, so let's get into this second piece right here. Okay, so with this second piece, this is part two. We just went through part one. And again, we're going to kind of scroll through kind of quickly here. I do hope to have the video wrapped up in the next 6 minutes here. So I do want to read this part out loud right here, though, because there is some truth to it, even though this is coming, again, from architects and not from librarians, but there's some truth. Academic libraries are grappling with an identity crisis, no longer seen as merely archives for print material or silent study halls for solitary work. Libraries can connect town and gown in ways that enrich both student and public life. Okay, and I'm going to revisit this in a second here. Many academic library buildings are campus icons, but ones that were built to protect and house books, not support people with daylight, fresh air, and views. So there is a little piece, something to kind of I don't know, something to kind of mention a little further there is that, yeah, when we talk about libraries, we traditionally haven't thought about, yeah, daylight, fresh air, and that sort of thing. But those things are important, and those things are things that don't necessarily have to be restricted in the academic library. Okay. So let's first talk about the accessibility here real quick. Basically, in a nutshell here, and I'm going to link these articles, but in a nutshell here, what you have is that they have made some improvements to accessibility for the excuse me, the disabled here. A new ADA entrance on Forbes Avenue combined with a new double height entry on another street are designed to help students up to multiple floors within the building. And so these things are, again, they're being done in a way to not just help with disabilities, but also help with just also offering more access to by more entrances into the building there. Connections to outdoors. This is something that actually I'm going to go with these next two things here. I'm actually going to kind of say a few words about these things in tandem. So this is actually going to vary from library to library. Now, first of all, not every university is even in an urban or a suburban setting. So you're going to have even Coastal Carolina, where I used to work. Coastal Carolina University is in Conway, North Carolina. It's not actually in Myrtle Beach proper, but also in being in Conway, it's not actually in the part of Conway where people actually live that much either. There is a residential neighborhood right next to Coastal Carolina, but really the campus is set apart from the beach and from the major attractions and things like that. So you don't necessarily have this desire to even, if people are coming to Coastal Carolina's campus, they're usually coming for a specific reason. They're coming there deliberately, okay? And that is what they want there. They want people who are there deliberately as opposed to just straggling along, coming out from the community and that sort of thing. So again, that's just something that's specific to that school, but that's something that's going to vary from school to school. And you are going to have, even in urban settings, you're going to have some campuses that just don't want that many people who are not affiliated with the campus coming onto the campus and into the library space. There are a lot of places that don't want to limit that. There are a lot of places that do want to limit that. So again, it's just something that varies from place to place. Now, as far as number 4 here, this softening book bunkers, I don't really need to elaborate on that too much, but I do want to just, again, let you all know. So the academic libraries these days, they do want the spaces to have more light and be brighter. And if you've been to Ellis Library, you will see, Ellis Library is the library at Mizzou. You will see that it can get pretty dark in particular parts of that library, okay? UMKC's library, which is where my office is, not quite as much. UMKC is, I think, better lit. It's newer. But yeah, I think it's, better lit, and also I think that they have made better use of windows and glass within UMKC, so actual sunlight actually gets in there. But again, UMKC's library is newer, so we were more conscious of these things. And then finally, talking about sustainability here. All right, so when it comes to these LEED certifications, and I don't know too much about them, but LEED is leadership in energy and environmental design. And the platinum is the upper tier. That's the best tier that buildings can be designed to have when it comes to energy and environmental concerns. And so, yes, they are, this is basically just saying they are targeting that upper echelon, which is platinum. Okay, I'm going to go to this other article. We are going to go a little bit over 25 minutes. I apologize for that, but it won't be too drastic. Okay, and I've highlighted the word space here just to keep myself on task so that I don't soapbox too much on this article, because there were just little quick points that I wanted to hit. This article really has more of that softer approach, more the soft kind of emotional, feel good sort of thing. But yes, what they are doing is they are making it clear within this article. And this article, by the way, came from Virginia Tech. So it came from Kayla McNabb of Virginia Tech, and I am going to link the article. Excuse me. So yes, we are wanting quote unquote low pressure spaces. So the library has often been a place where students have been allowed to study and be stressed out at exam week and things like that. But we don't want our students to be stressed out. We do oftentimes want our students to be comfortable and to feel low pressure. You can feel that pressure in the classroom, but when you're in the library, we want you to be studying and obtaining that knowledge and everything, but we want that to be a low pressure space. So if we want that to be a low pressure space, then we can do things such as having the snacks, having the therapy dogs and things like that, which you will see that at a lot of academic campuses, especially around exam time. They'll bring in the dogs and things like that during exam week or other high stress weeks, because again, we want to maintain that library space as a low pressure space. And we want to center joy. And so this article is about centering joy, by the way. So I don't know how to put joy at the center of your university library. And the last thing that I do want to mention here is, again, just this reiteration of what we saw in the other place. Make your library a place where people can make mistakes. Okay, you're going to have your novices that are using the library. Your students are going to be coming in trying to get their first experiences at a lot of things. And so you can be very supportive by just allowing your students to make mistakes, and then also being there and being an expert in the things that you have in your library space, so that when your students are making mistakes, you are the person that can come in, correct them, make them feel better, correct them in a appropriate way, but make them feel better and let them know that, hey, everybody's got to start somewhere. So I am Dr. Jace, and these are just a few words about library space. Take care. I'll see you next week in a sync session with Julia.